welcome back to the Tea and a Butty podcast. I'm Dominic.
And I'm Erica.
And today's episode, we're going to be talking about the fall of the British Empire.
Dun, 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 dun.
Yes, Erica's been watching Freaks and Geeks. Because we recently got Paramount Plus for a
It's my first time.
limited time, so...
Nothing to do with the fall of the British Empire.
Well, actually, it was Freaks and Geeks who caused the fall of the British Empire.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I've been binging it. So.
You've been binging it, yeah. I mean, yes.
So segue into the fall of the British Empire from that.
A smooth segue into the fall of the British Empire. Yeah, I mean, we just decided to discuss this because it's not something, I mean, you discuss really, is it? You know?
Well, I mean,
it's not something you make small talk about with people in an elevator. You know, you're going up and you go, let's talk about the fall of the British Empire, shall we, Bob?
I don't think this podcast is just small talk. I mean, sometimes we have...
No, we've got some hard-hitting topics.
I don't know about that either, but...
Chocolate. That's a hard-hitting topic.
I mean...
What's your favourite biscuit?
I mean, the point of this podcast is to talk about things that we want to talk about, and the fall of the British Empire is
something we want to talk.
Something that I want to talk about.
Yeah.
Because I want to know.
Because you presume it's fallen, you see. But it hasn't.
Oh, God.
We're just sleeping.
Depends on who you ask, I guess.
I mean, it does depend on who you ask. There's a lot of people going, well, yeah, you see, we're still around, you see.
Yeah.
We're still got influence in the world.
But no, you know, just to backtrack again, not all the way to Freaks and Geeks, but but to the point of this podcast. I mean, the point of this podcast is to talk about things that you sit around and talk about. And no, people don't sit around and talk about the fall of the British Empire.
Yeah, they do.
But I mean,
all the time.
But I mean, we might obviously because we kind of have.
We have, yeah. We've touched on it. I think it's kind of come up because, I mean, you've got a niece and nephew.
I mean, people who like to think about things, you know, they talk about...
And kids and stuff, you know, they go to school
things.
and they come home with, like, a topic that they were talking about and you just think about, like, oh, yeah, you know.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't think they've come home with the fall of the British Empire, but...
Well, no. That's not something that's taught in the American curriculum.
How did... Britain lose their empire?
Well, I mean, if you talk about the British Empire, the natural thing is like, oh, is it still going? Is it still a thing? And you say no, and it's like, oh, well, when did it end then?
What happened there? Yeah.
Is there an end date for it? You know? And the answer to it is no. There isn't like an end date.
Yeah.
You know,
There's not like a day where they were like... That's it.
That's
we have
it.
no
And
empire
it's the same
anymore.
with Rome, you know. Same with any empire. It just kind of falls. And if it falls, it just like,
That's another topic that...
The fall of the Roman Empire.
Yeah, yes. I don't know if it's for this podcast, but that's something I've always been interested in. Like, how do these empires end? You know, like, what happens?
With the British Empire, at its, you know, it was the largest empire in history.
You know, because you had the China Dynasty, the Ottoman Empire.
We're not talking about take away places.
Oh no. You know, you had several. I think a lot of people think that Britain's the only country that had an empire, and it's just like, well, I mean, besides maybe Rome.
Well, Rome was Italy, wasn't it? You know, but it wasn't.
Yes.
It wasn't the Italian Empire. I mean, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the Ottoman Empire.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. There's been a lot of empires over time, and
the China Dynasty, as you say, or the Dynasty of China.
I don't think you couldn't say it.
There was a German Empire at some point.
You couldn't really say that there is one now. I don't think, right? I think
an empire.
Yeah, that's the point of the spread of democracy, right?
Democracy, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's put an end to all the
imperialism.
empires. Yeah.
I mean, we'll talk about it in probably the next episode, the Commonwealth.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the closest thing to a successor to an empire.
Yeah.
You know, which succeeded the British Empire.
Yeah, that'll be next time.
The Commonwealth of Nations.
So mark your calendars.
Mark your calendars for the Commonwealth of Nations.
But anyway, yeah.
It's, you know, at its height, the British Empire, it was the largest in world history, and it covered around 25% of the world's land. So, yeah.
Like, how do they know that, though?
Because, you know, there was all that phrase, the sun never sets on the British Empire.
Yeah.
Because,
so just
but it was like territories and land covered, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that is what an empire is.
Large areas of North America, Australia, Africa, and Asia were all part of the British Empire at one time or other. Other areas, especially in South America, were closely linked to the British Empire by trade.
Okay, because I was going to say...
So it was a large empire that controlled the world's economy for, like, a good few years.
Yeah, because I was going to say, they never referred to Spain as having had an empire, do they?
No, it was just it was kind of like a lot of
Spanish Conquisition, or what do they call
Inquisition.
it? Inquisition? No, that's not it.
The conquistadors?
No, that's not it. Maybe that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I mean, Spain, it colonized a lot, and the British colonized a lot.
Did I say conquisition?
A conquisition.
What even is that?
Conquistador.
I tell you guys that my mouth works way before my brain most of the time. And by the time my brain catches up, I'm just like, what in God's name am I talking about? I'm so sorry.
Conquistadors.
I'm so sorry if you're sitting there listening to me half the time. Like, what in God's name is coming out of her mouth? Because even I don't know. Anyway. But what I'm saying is that, all of Mexico, South America, like there's quite a lot of Spanish-speaking countries.
The Spanish Main, they used to call it.
But you never consider that like an empire?
No, because, I mean, at the same time, it was just a lot of, like, I haven't looked into this.
Yeah, we're just talking.
We're just talking here, but Spain had a lot of, like...
You don't come to this podcast for facts.
People walked out of Spain,
yeah,
got on a boat.
Yeah.
And then they went across the sea and colonized thing, but it wasn't part of like Spain's empire. Spain wasn't like,
yeah,
it was like they were already independent kind of countries.
Hmm.
When Spain had them, when the Spanish came,
yeah,
it was just a lot of Spanish people just came over.
Yeah.
And just started like taking over.
They didn't. Okay. I mean, as far as we're
aware.
as far as we're saying, anyway.
Because if you think about it, yeah, Spain would have had a quite a big empire.
Yeah.
They would have. I mean, they obviously
had. But it was more about maybe just migration and colonization,
and I mean, I'm sure like.
They didn't go and put a flag up and say this is now Spain.
I don't think so. No.
I mean, in Mexico they did. They had Nuevo España was
but then
Mexico.
The Latin way of things.
Yeah.
It was like, we're rebelling against that and we're declaring this an independent state.
Yeah.
And calling it Mexico or Brazil or Argentina. Well, actually Brazil is more Portuguese.
Yeah. That's always interesting.
That's so funny because Portugal's so small on the edge of Spain there, you'd think they would have been overrun, but obviously not,
Yeah.
I mean, it's an interesting thing, Spain had a...
Anybody who knows about history...
France had a bit of an empire for a while.
Yeah.
But it was mostly in, like, France and Belgium in, like, the middle of Africa there. They
had part of the United States, too, France, for
the southern part.
Hot minute.
The southern part, yeah, like they had large parts of Louisiana, I think, and Oklahoma.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, of course, they had parts of Canada as well.
Yeah.
Anyway, getting back to the British Empire.
But the British Empire reigned supreme. No, it was mainly because it had such a good, like, grasp of economy. And grasp of trade.
Yeah.
So that's how it was able to survive in, like, places like Canada. And, it had the 13 colonies, because it didn't have the whole of the United States.
No.
It had Australia, India. India was its biggest, like, hub for a while. And
New Zealand? Did it have New Zealand?
Yeah, it had New Zealand, yeah.
South Africa
and large parts of southern Africa too, and yeah, they and I think they were trying to get like most of the Middle East, but that that doesn't work out so well,
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it covered 25% of the world's land surface.
Oh, interesting.
So, there's no simple answer to how it declined.
Yeah.
Because people, like people you meet, like maybe over here would think, oh, it declined when when the US declared independence, and that's when that's when it was over.
Yeah.
The empire. It's like, no, it wasn't. That was like that was part of the first British Empire.
Well, maybe that's what, I mean, don't you think, though, that probably had, like, set the ball rolling for some of the other countries to go, actually, yeah, why are we British all the way over here,
Maybe. But it was like, as I said, there's like a first British Empire and then there's a second one, because in 1920, that was, the US was fully functional,
Yeah.
It was fully autonomous.
Yeah.
And that was when the British Empire was at its biggest. Was it? Yeah, it was like that was when it was at its zenith.
Okay.
That was when it was like recorded as having everything,
Oh, I didn't realize it was still going.
It was, it was largely when Ireland decided, yeah, we want out of here.
Yeah.
And I think they declared independence in 1922.
Yeah.
And then by 1949, it was finally recognized by Britain.
I mean, basically, it sounds like it was just a case of these countries going,
It was kind of like it was like a big operation of them, like Canada and stuff going, yeah, you know what, you can't keep this up anymore.
Yeah.
So we're going to and Britain was, and the island of Britain, London, whatever, they were just like, yeah, we can't keep demanding taxes from people who don't live here, know.
It's not gonna work.
Too much of a wide influence.
Yeah.
It was
spreading yourself too thin.
Spreading yourself too thin.
Yeah.
So they put in place, people started to decolonize, and it was just kind of like, okay, the British are going to leave now, or they can stay, but it's no longer, oh, you're subject to British rule here, you can't do that because London and the Queen says no.
Yeah.
It's like, no, it's like, we're going to be self-governing now. We're not going to be governed from some far-off island in, the North Atlantic,
Yeah, what were we watching? Actually, maybe it was something, I can't remember. Something we were watching, some people were saying, we just don't feel any connection to Britain anymore, like it was so long ago. Maybe it was someone in Australia?
I don't know, because I think Australia, for being, like, the biggest, like, British colony, you could say.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, compared to Canada, maybe not, but, Australia, there's still quite a British influence there.
Yeah.
I
mean, I guess that depends who you ask, though,
Yeah, because, I mean, if you go to Australia, they go, oh, the bloody Poms.
Yeah.
Bloody, even though they could be like, their grandfather could have been born in the UK, Because, I mean, there's still a lot of, like, when I was a kid, everyone was emigrating to Australia. It was like the early 1990s, and everyone was, oh, we're going to Australia. Yeah, we're moving to Australia.
Yeah.
And it's like, and, my dad even, when he was in the Merchant Navy, he wanted to, like, move there.
Oh, yeah.
I guess because you go down there and it's like, oh, sunshine and beautiful scenery and everything's great, People want to move there. The Brits want to go there, And it's like, there's like a big way of life.
And they speak English.
They speak English because, if you're not familiar, that's where Britain used to send the majority of its prisoners.
Yes.
Because it couldn't cope with the...
Well, that's how it started, isn't it?
That's how it started, yeah. Well, that's how it started for when Britain found it.
For white people.
For white people, yes. And, and that's how, most of the white people there, I'd say pretty much all of them, are descended from, Britain.
Yeah.
In some fashion or another.
I mean, unless they just recently moved there from, some other European country.
Well, that's true, but, I mean, there's not too much... because it's a long way.
Yeah.
It's a long, long way away.
Yeah.
It's the other side of the world, as they say,
And I mean, it's weird, and I guess that is the reason for it, that you never hear Australia referred to as like a melting pot like the United States.
No,
and when I think of Australia, I think of mostly like descendants of indigenous people and white people. And, maybe some
well,
like
New Zealand have Maoris too.
Maybe like some Asian people, some people from Asia, because those are the closest countries, know. But in America, it's just like they're from absolutely everywhere, all over the world. They've come far and wide to this land, and for some reason, the same doesn't seem to, in theory, be true about Australia, and I don't really have an explanation as to why.
If you look at a map now, because I'm looking at the map.
Yeah.
I've got a map up above, on the wall here, and it's just, the Atlantic Ocean, it's a long way.
Yeah.
So, from the Europe to United States, but it's still, you go pretty much in a straight line from Spain and you hit the USA.
Yeah.
North America.
Mm.
With Australia, you have, before the time of, aeroplanes and stuff, you'd have to go through,
what is it? The line of longitude? Isn't that the ones that go across this way? No. There's latitude and longitude. Longitude? Why does that sound so weird? Is up and down?
No, that's longitude. Oh, I don't know now. You confusing me. Anyway.
But anyway, that's what we're talking about. Like, it's not. There's nothing else really. Like,
but it's also
if you were just sailing around the world.
It's a long way from, say, like you're going from Britain and you sailed. You couldn't get through the Mediterranean Sea, and because the Suez Canal didn't exist then. You'd have to round Africa. You'd have to go down to the southern Atlantic, crossing the equator. And maybe even you'd either round the Cape of Good Hope, which is Africa, and go that way, or you could go round the Drake's Passage, which is at the tip of South America, and they're both really like, because that's where seas meet. It's very rough and everything like that, and it's just kind of like, you might not survive that.
Ships don't like to go there. Yeah.
And so it was just a long way. So
I guess that's
can you imagine
why,
people doing that? It's just like, I don't want to be killed on my voyage. I'd rather have a nice little cross the pond to, America and just...
Unless you're traveling on the Titanic.
Unless you're traveling on the Titanic, then... But people forget about the Titanic. Before it hit the iceberg, it was very, very nice.
It was a lovely cruise.
It was a lovely cruise. If they just didn't hit that iceberg, it would have been perfect. And it probably would have been too, actually.
Well, yeah.
They would have got to New York, and it would have just been a Wikipedia entry with, oh yes,
Well, nobody would have been looking for that.
Well, they would have. I mean, my grandmother was on the Titanic when they came over to New York.
Nobody would have cared about the Titanic if it hadn't crashed. If it hadn't sunk.
It might have got there very fast, and someone would have recorded it.
Anyway. But yeah, so it's just a case, basically, of these countries going...
Yes.
You know what? We have no connection
to Britain. No connection.
Get them out of here.
We have no connection to Britain. I've never been to Britain. I was born here.
Yeah.
And there could be a white person or whatever, and it's just kind of like, let's just do self-governance here in South Africa.
I don't feel any sort
India.
of, like,
India,
allegiance to the Queen or
whatever.
It's
like I've never been there, so I don't care.
In the same breath, though, you could say that there probably are also people who feel the opposite, who are quite proud to, like, oh yes, we have a queen, we're British in a way, I mean, maybe. Maybe there are people
Empire dwindled. And I mean, the First and Second World Wars left Britain weakened.
Right, yeah.
Weakened very badly.
Yeah.
And a lot of the Empire contributed troops and resources to the war effort.
Yeah.
But, it was like a lot of people took an increasingly independent view after that, saying, we're sending, Australia's sending all this, and, Ireland's sending all this, and, Canada's sending all this to a country to fight its war, and we're not even really part of it.
Yeah,
It's not affecting us. Germany's never going to come and get us.
Yeah.
So, it's just like, why should we help them out?
Yeah.
What are we? Because we've been ordered to by their queen.
Right.
It's like, we have to do it. And so, a lot of them are like, well, we just need to be independent and we'll make the decision, of whether we do that.
It's like once...
So after 1945, it was all...
Once time progressed
declined.
In a way that there was not going to be a war, like in America, like a revolutionary war, let's say, because... Britain was just not going to fight people in order to keep hold of these places anymore.
No,
the places were just like, you know what? Let's get out of this deal.
Yes, it's not like because
it's easy now. They're not going to fight back.
They're not going to fight back because you don't have the money to.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have the resources to expend.
Well, and I think besides
and it's
money,
also like if you go to the British people, do you know what the Indian people want to leave Britain?
Yeah.
Or Australia wants to leave the empire.
When did they lose India, by the way? Do you happen to know that?
I think it was like 1949, maybe?
Yeah.
I'm actually not sure. Actually, no. When was Gandhi? Gandhi was in the 60s, wasn't he?
Mm.
When was he assassinated?
Oh, I don't remember.
So it was like India was like one of the last ones, I think, to like go. And I think that was kind of like, because there was a lot of people in India who were like, it was kind of like a situation in Northern Ireland where Gandhi was all, let's go for independence, and there was a lot of resistance to him,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And so it was like, Northern Ireland people wanted to independence, and there was a lot of people who were like, no, we will remain with Britain.
Yeah.
And of course it eventually ended up being decolonized.
Mm-hmm. And then you have places like, not that they are, this is sort of getting into next time's podcast, I suppose, but you have places like the Falkland Islands and,
yes.
Oh my gosh, my brain.
The Falkland Islands.
Gibraltar. Yeah. Where they're constantly back and forth. Are we part of
Gibraltar
Britain or are we
unanimously apparently wants to stay within British rule.
Yeah, but Spain wants them back.
Spain keeps claiming it back.
Yeah. They're just claiming
They're
it.
just like, oh, Gibraltar's ours now. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
We're going to invade. And it's like, no, you're not. Because the people there don't like it.
Mm.
And it's like, if you did that, you'd lose EU membership and, that would be the end for you,
Mm.
The Falkland Islands, obviously, Argentina wants it.
Yeah.
And Galtieri was one of these people who was like, yeah, we're taking it back.
Mm.
And we're invading and whatever,
Yeah.
And of course Britain had to fight back, and of course
you can understand.
They wouldn't have gone to, though, if the US hadn't approved that, the Falkland Islands could very well be part of Argentina right now.
If the US hadn't approved
Britain going to war, because they have to go to the UN.
Oh right,
to start one.
They
like they have to go to the UN and go, oh yeah, can we start a war, please?
Right.
Because no one declares war anymore.
Yeah, I know. It's all negotiated.
It's all kind of negotiated and diplomatic and all that. It's not just kind of like, this means war,
Yeah, well, no one that's in the UN anyway declares war.
Well, no. Pulling out of the UN would be a disaster. But yes, it's what the Empire's left behind is, after it kind of like, went away.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's the majority of former colonies still keep their ties with Britain through the Commonwealth. And North America and Australia are very similar to Europe in a lot of ways. English language, democracy, Christianity, for better or for worse.
I think there's a I think we're at a time in history where colonization is really, really, seen as despicable and...
Well, it's terrible, yeah. It was. Because, at the end of the day, it's just like white people rocking up to a freaking thing with a gun and saying, this is ours now. This is
ours now, yeah. Isn't it weird how, I don't know, at different points in history, we were taught to be proud of that. And I think that's where we are now, is like realizing, wait a minute, that wasn't something so that we should have been proud of. But it is something that happened, and you can't take it back. You know?
No, it's history at the end of the day, and you can't say. There's a lot of people in Britain, the nationalists, who are all for it.
Yeah.
All for restarting the empire. And...
restarting the empire. It's just like, yeah, let's take everything back.
England, and they just have a narrow kind of view. They think it's like, it's easy to just like, oh yeah, Royal Navy, and yeah, we've got a large navy. And it's no. You don't. England doesn't have a large military anymore.
I think a lot of it is just ignorance, isn't it? It's just sort of like a reluctance to accept change,
Yes.
And people's opinions are evolving about things all over the world, about things that happened in history, and the way that certain events were portrayed to us when we were in school, And I think that people are going, wait a minute, the way we learned this in history isn't exactly right anymore, Yeah,
because we talked about that in a previous episode about what was the we weren't taught about the British Empire. It was only scantily kind of like glossed over, like, oh yes, when the British were in India, or when Hong Kong was given back to the Chinese. And,
because I suppose you could say some of the things that the British Empire gave the world were good, but you could also
was it a force for good or not? It's a thing, but it's
because you mentioned the English language, and it's like, is it good that you can find English in all these different countries that it wasn't their language to begin with? It's like, just depends on who you ask, really.
Yeah.
It's like
we taught you English,
it's
now
like
be respectful.
It's convenient for us English speakers, but it's also sort of like, what did we lose there? We lost going to another country and it being foreign and it being a different experience than what we're used to.
You can still do that, though. Obviously it's like, there's, English, I don't think, people who speak it think it takes up all the world, like that's the ignorance into play there. Anyone from Britain or America or maybe even Canada or Australia going to like France or Spain or something, they're going, oh, no one speaks English here, what's going on? Why don't they speak English? That's terrible. And it's just kind of like, when I go to Spain or I go to France or Italy, it's kind of like, I'm gonna have to say buongiorno, or hola, and I'm gonna have to like do it, and it's like it's frustrating because you don't speak the language, but that's your fault.
It's like, learn it.
It's like, it's not their fault that they don't know your language.
Yeah.
And it's like, parlez-vous anglais?
Yeah.
And if they go, and it's just like, okay, we'll figure this out.
It's inconvenient when you can't communicate with someone, but in my opinion, I kind of want that when I go to another country.
Yes.
Like, I want to immerse myself in their culture. I want to have to struggle to communicate with them if that's what's necessary.
My dad lives in Spain, and he lives in this smallish town, which is close to, like, touristy spots.
Yeah.
But not enough that everyone, obviously, everyone speaks English or knows it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's funny because we went to this, I think it was the first time we went out on our own. We went to this restaurant, and the waitress, she only spoke English very little.
Yeah.
Very.
But she didn't want, because I was trying to speak Spanish to her.
She was like, no, speak English, because I want to learn English.
She wanted to practice her English. Yeah. Yeah, so.
And it's just like, okay, and we were just kind of like, and she was like, oh, is this how you say it in, I think we asked for the bill.
Yeah, I could not remember the Spanish word. Yeah.
La cuenta!
I was like, el cheque, el cheque, el billete. I could not for the life of me remember the word for check in Spanish. And she was like, she figured it out, what we were asking for. And then she goes, is this how you call it in America? The bill? Because I said billete. And then I was like, yeah, we call it the bill.
The bill, yeah. The check.
Yeah. Can I get the check? Can I get the bill?
And it was that's interesting, because they want to learn, she was a young girl, so, it's just like, oh yeah, if I can learn my English, I can get a job.
Yeah.
And I can speak Spanish too, so it's like bilingual,
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, coming to Texas, that's an advantage too, because there's a lot of Spanish speakers here, so.
Yeah. And you've learned a bit of Spanish.
I've picked it up. I'm better at reading it than I am. It's funny because, if you're speaking so fast. We're watching I Love Lucy.
Yeah.
And Ricky goes into like a Spanish rant, and they have the subtitles up and they'd subtitled it in Spanish.
Yeah.
And I was like, I got what he'd said, just from some of the words, I was like, oh, I can, so it's like, I was just like, yeah, I know what he's talking about. He's annoyed or whatever. He's annoyed about Lucy doing this, and that's what he's saying,
There you go. Freaks and Geeks, British Empire, speaking Spanish.
Yeah.
This is what you get from this podcast.
What's what you get. La cuenta.
Oh my gosh.
But anyway.
Yeah, I mean,
I think we'll leave this. Well, this.
It's a little. I mean, it's a bit of a complicated topic when we're not scholars
in a fallen empire.
Well, when we're not scholars on this subject,
we're not scholars. But I mean, even scholars, it's kind of like they disagree. Historians disagree on things.
Yeah.
And it's like, unfortunately, it's kind of like where you've come from and you've learned this and you've looked at this and you've done the research and you've talked to other people, and then someone goes, well, actually, that's not how the way it was like this, and they're just going to argue back and forth. It's like neither of them were there because they were born 200 years too late,
So if you're an expert on the British Empire, let us know your opinion on its rise and its decline. The rise and fall of the what is it?
Rise and fall of the British Empire?
Yeah, the
fall and rise of Reginald Barron.
Oh my gosh. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. As always, we appreciate your support. Be sure to check us out on social media. We are at Butty, TEABUTTY on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And we will talk to you next time.
La cuenta!
Bye.
Adios, amigos.